Okay, this one might be like the newest fallacy. Um,
Alternative truth. Okay, you want me to
yeah,
read it?
this one, I'm just checking really quick that it actually says, um, okay, I guess it doesn't necessarily say it. Well, kind of does, but um, yeah, this one gained a lot of traction, especially after I think this is the news report it's referencing in here. We'll read it in a second, but I think it was in 2017 where um, people wanted their opinion to be true so much that on live television, I think it was on Fox News, where someone was like, "Yeah, I have these facts that show this," and then the news reporter, who is on a biased news channel, is like, "Yeah, well, I have alternative facts." It's like, no, that violates the three laws of logic, which we should go over. Let's go over them after this fallacy.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Yeah. All right.
I'll read alternative truth, the one of the more recent ones in history. So, alternative truth, also alternative facts, counter knowledge, disinformation, information pollution. A newly famous contemporary fallacy of logos, which is the divine, rooted in postmodernism, denying the resilience of facts or truth as such. Writer Hannah Arendt, in her The Originals of Totalitarianism in 1951, warned that the ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the dedicated communist, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction, true and false, no longer exists. That is a really powerful quote. Journalist Leslie Grass in 2017 writes in her blog, reachoutrecovery.com, is there someone in your life who insists things happened that didn't happen, or has a completely different version of events in which you have the facts? It's a form of mind control and is very common amongst families dealing with substance and behavior problems. She suggests that such alternate facts work to put you off balance, control the story, and make you think you're crazy. And she notes that presenting alternate facts is the hallmark of untrustworthy people. The alternative truth fallacy is related to the big lie technique. The also gaslighting, blind loyalty, the big brain, little brain fallacy, and true truth. It's interesting. As soon as I was reading this, the very first word that came to mind was gaslighting. And so it's interesting that it's also gaslighting. I'm like, oh yeah, like huge. Yeah, this big one.
This one's bigger than just. I think gaslighting, while more is commonly used for an individual's case, this is like half of America right now. This is on a massive scale.
I feel like alternative truth is like, it's like if you take, I feel like gaslighting is like a tactic, whereas like alternative truth is an ism. It's like a full on, like, it's a full on like, I don't say ecosystem, but it's like a full on thing. It's like alternative truth. It requires multiple things. It's like, how would I describe it? It's like alternative truth is an overall outcome that requires multiple strategies and tactics in order to acquire.
Yeah.
Whereas gaslighting is just like a singular thing that someone can do in a sentence. I saw this post on Instagram that was like, it said, "Have you heard the joke about gaslighting?" And the person's like, "No." It's like, "Yes, you have." I haven't. Yes, you have. No, I haven't. Yes, you have. It's like, oh, it's. I thought that was. It was actually, even though like the video was supposed to be funny, I actually found myself quite activated by it. Anyway,
Interesting.
back to fallacy, alternative truth.
Yeah. So, alternative truth. Oh boy. All right. So how do we dive into where this comes from? I think I briefly mentioned it earlier. Um, essentially it is fueled by people wanting something to be true rather than um, speaking for what the actual truth of something is. And on one regard, yeah, this is something I discovered not super long ago, where I asked. I'm convinced that I can uh, use logical steps to help someone to determine that there's no reason for a particular belief system. And I would ask some friends this, like, hey, and I'll just be like super blunt, that uh, they wanted to know whether there was actually a reason to believe in God. And I'm like, well, if I were to go through the logical steps with you, um, and believing in God is something that makes you happy, I don't want to take that happiness from you if you end up concluding that there is no reason to believe in God, and that would change your mind. And I feel like that would be a negative because we have enough information to know that people who are theists are in fact more happy than atheists. Full stop. The science says so. So who am I to take that away from somebody? I don't think that's necessary. So unless you actually believe that you care about truth more than the conclusion, or like I should say, I would rather believe a an unfortunate truth rather than a happy lie. But I've found that most people are not like that. I would ask people if we were to go down this line of conversation who um, wants to really talk to me about this. I'm like, okay, like I'm open to changing my mind. If you could present evidence with God existing, I will absolutely change my mind. However, I would only have this conversation with you if you agree to do the same. And I'm not, and I'm not sure you are. And I don't want to if I think that's going to make you sad. Only two people ever have I asked where they said, yes, if you could show me that there's no reason to believe in God, I would stop believing in God and I would be happier doing it. Only two people have ever told me that yes, they'd be happier. The other ones, I would ask them that question and I'm like, okay, so let's say I could hypothetically show to you not just that there's no reason to believe in God, but that in your particular religion, there is certainly no God, and that particular religion is truly impossible in the logical sense. Uh, if I could hypothetically do that, because no one in the belief like thinks that's a possibility, of course. But I'm just like, hey, let's throw it out there hypothetically. If that was something that was possible, um, would you stop believing if you knew for sure it was not true, or would you force yourself to just believe it anyways? And I need to keep better track of this to know the exact percentage, but I'm going to say around 80% of people answered I would still force myself to believe the thing that I know isn't true anyways because it makes me comfortable, is their answer. That blows my mind. I'm truth first kind of person. I believe that only factual information has practical application. And when we don't have that, then we get alternative truth, where when what you want to believe matters more than the truth of it, that's how we get so much misinformation that people want something to be true rather than seeking the truth of it, seeing if it is or not, using the scientific method, falsifiability, all of that, determine what is true. And instead, almost everybody prefers confirmation bias, where they will just seek information that uh, give support to what they already believe instead of challenging their beliefs. And I think on a societal level, not even just in America, but mostly America, this is a big one. Alternative truth is a really big, and it takes so much language to, I, in my opinion, to just even start talking about how big of an impact this one is, and how much language it takes to kind of debunk, because it's a lot faster for Trump to tell a lie that people are eating dogs and cats to make people scared of immigrants coming in because they don't want them to eat their pets. When it's like just the biggest lie ever, but Trump believes it's actually true because he heard someone on the news say it, and then when it was debunked later, he's like, "Oh well, we'll see." Like, no, now your claim is unfalsifiable because if we never see, you could still just say, "Oh well, we'll see." No, now it's meaningless because it's unfalsifiable.
Right.
So,
no, I totally get that. I'm curious with yourself. What is the difference between, just like what's the difference between faith and trust? What for you is the difference between truth and fact?
Yeah. So a fact is an individual datum. A fact is something that we can both verify to be true, something that's not in dispute, an individual thing that we can check regularly, like, is the sky blue, is taken as a fact, right? Sometimes it could be other colors for different reasons, but generally that's the color of the sky, right? I have a dark gray car. That's the fact. So a fact is just a simple individual data. Really simple. Truth, in order to get truth, does require the scientific method. Unless we're talking about mathematics and logic, of course, but I could also argue that as a form of science. But for truth, the best that we can do is come to a scientific consensus that this is consistent beyond reasonable doubt. If we were to go from the true logical standpoint of, well, you can't say that's absolutely true. You can only say things that are absolutely false, and whatever is remaining, you can say is most likely true, but you can't say it's absolutely true. Sure, very well. However, it's not productive to not take things that are consistent beyond reasonable doubt as not true, and just be like, "Oh, whoa! I don't know about this whole gravity thing. It's not absolutely true." Like, there comes a point where you need to accept something to move forward as more likely true than not, because it's just consistent beyond reasonable doubt. That's the best that they could do for truth, and I think that in order for society to move forward, we don't physically have the lifetime to. Well, technically, even if you had millions of years, you still could not conclude anything in science in the positive. So for that reason, you could say that you could have greater trust that something is true the more we experiment on it. And for that reason, you might as well consider it to be true. Because the contrary of not doing that is not productive, never moving forward.
Interesting. That's really
Hope that answers the question. Yeah, truth and facts are completely different. Fact is an individual datum. Truth is this whole phenomenon concept that we're trying to search for.
No, there's a phrase that my dad used to say a lot growing up, and I think it because honestly, as I heard listening to your answer, I was like, I don't know if it does answer my question, because there was a lot in there, and for me, it's like
I defined You asked what is a fact, what is truth, and I defined both of them. I don't know how to help you. I'm sorry.
No. Well, then here, perhaps because the definition of truth as you were describing it was lost on me. Then could you
Mm-hmm.
could you define truth
Sure.
without the like as concise as you
I'll
can
give.
actually define truth?
Okay. A truth. Truth is an abstract concept of something that we can be positively certain of.
Wow, that feels really good. I like that one. That feels good.
But in science, that's unachievable. So the best you can do is say that this is consistent beyond reasonable doubt.
Mm.
Is that good enough? Sorry.
Yeah. No. It's good. I think it's, dude. I think especially as we're talking about fallacies. I
Mm-hmm.
think if you really think about it, I think a lot of what we're even doing here is being in the pursuit of truth.
Absolutely.
Like,
100%.
and it's like almost like, like in the Constitution, it's like the pursuit of happiness. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, is happiness something that we ever accomplish? I don't know, but but the pursuit of it, it's like it's what
Right.
drives life in a sense. And I think that it's like, there was a phrase my dad used to say to me was, there's three sides to every story. There's person A's side, person B's side, and then there's the truth. And
Right.
it's like, I love that little phrase because it acknowledges that every person has their own way of looking at what happened. And it also points at like, hey, like the truth is actually like what actually happened might
Mm-hmm.
never be able to be understood or known. Because like it was funny, I think his way of using that was trying to say, if you want to understand what really happened, you need to ask both person A and person B, and then decide what happened for yourself, so you can know what actually happened. But I think for me, what that
Yeah.
little idiom or that classical thing really paints out is, hey, there's actually no way of knowing the truth. There's just our pursuit of it, which hopefully will get us closer and closer to the thing we never will be able to actually grasp with our hands. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, and being able to surrender to that, and being able to like, I think a part of it is like being able to, yeah, I think a part of the human experience is being able to like relieve the need to be able to stand to, I have the truth. It's like, are you sure? Like, is that even possible?
Yeah, it's not really. I mean, unless it's in logic and mathematics, you cannot actually achieve truth. Uh, for example, if you could come up with a better analogy, I would love it. But the analogy that I use is the favorite color to the color that you have hypothesis that I made up. If we're testing every single person in the world and their favorite color just happens to be the color of their car, every single one, 8 billion people, and not a single one is off. Can we say that's true? In the scientific sense, like as far as like colloquial, that was the word I was missing the other day. In the
Yeah.
colloquial sense, yeah, we could say that's true because it's just like it's consistent beyond reasonable doubt. We did this test 8 billion times, and so far it's the truth. Um, so at that point, it would be unreasonable to expect a difference at that point. But it still
Yeah.
can happen. If one individual person proved that wrong, and they're like, no, my favorite color is red, and I have a blue car, the entire theory is dead. The whole thing. It retains its falsifiability. And in order to retain falsifiability, you can never have absolute truth. And yeah, unless it's in math or logic. So speaking of that, we're going over the list of essentially things that are unreasonable. So to help, we should learn what is reasonable. And this is a very short understanding. So let's quickly Google the 3 laws of logic. And then I'm going to present one very useful tool that we can use to determine reasonability in the positive sense. And then we'll continue to number eight. Are you Googling that?
Oh, you want me to Google it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
I was like waiting for you to go for it. What is it? The three
laws of logic.
the laws of logic. Okay. Is it the law of identity, law of non-contradiction, law of excluded middle?
Exactly.
Can you read them?
Yeah. Is there I'm not sure what you're looking at. Is there a description of each of them?
There is. There's an explanation
Hell yeah.
of each.
Let's do it.
They're very short though. So the law of identity. If something is true, then it must be true.
Mhm.
The law of non-contradiction. If it is not possible for a statement to be true and it is not possible for a statement to be true and false at the same time.
Yep.
Interesting. So that implies that paradoxes are not real. That's interesting to me.
Yeah. They are
A
not.
law of excluded middle. Either something is true or it is false.
Right. 99.99% true is still false. If there's any part of it that's not absolute true, it is false.
So your statement about paradoxes aren't real, that to me is actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've found that to be not accurate. I found there to be plenty of paradox. It's like, well, one rule applies in this situation, and then in another situation, that same rule does not apply.
And therefore, the rule is false. This is why we're doing this at Alternative Truth. This is why we're doing it here. Because I think a lot of people miss, or we could do it at like argument from authority, but essentially it's like if you have an idea, where let's say, because one that I believe is mostly true, but not always, would be like you are the combination of the 5 people you surround yourself most with, right? Like that's not a scientific statement. We just heard somebody say that, and we're like, you know what? That kind of describes me. That makes sense. Like, okay, so like it's a leap of logic to say, oh well, that's true for me. That's true for other people. It's true sometimes. I don't know if it's true all the time, but like everything that I'm seeing seems like it fits that. So therefore, it's absolutely true. No, like you can't just make that jump. It's helpful to like have that idea to be more selective with positive influence on your life or otherwise. I think that idea is helpful, but just because someone can utter a sentence that sounds pretty like that doesn't make the sentence true automatically. Yeah, each rule like that needs to have its own merit. You need actual scientific evidence. I used to quote Tony Robbins a lot, specifically one where he was like, 55% of communication is body language. I think it was 37% is tone of voice. And then, or I think it was 38. And then 7% is the actual words that we say. And I used to just say that as if it's absolute truth. And I'm like, you know what? I need to actually know if this is true or not. And then I Googled it. And as a matter of fact, there is scientific evidence backing that one. That one is correct. I am now happy saying that one all the time. But something else somebody might say that's just like, I'm sure you and I were in life coaching businesses for a while, and so we've heard stuff like this a lot. Yeah. So yeah, it's just because someone can utter the sentence doesn't make it a true rule. Um, it could have helpful application sometimes, but if it's not factual, sometimes it can have negative results from that. And if that is a contradiction, then that is falsifiability. That makes the rule not true. That dismisses the hypothesis. The end.
What about two separate contexts? That if you create a context of which a certain rule or situation is true in this context, but not in another context,
That it's still not true. But we can to help. Uh, let's be super specific. Let's pick out a rule, and we'll treat it as a hypothesis. We'll determine if it's falsifiable or not, and see what qualifies. So, can you think of one besides the five people?
I'm really trying to think of one right now. Let's see. Because what I'm thinking of right now, there was a personal development container that I was in, that one of their big, it was insanely valuable in the sense that they created a really powerful environment um to hear feedback from other people, um in a how do I put this? Like, they created a really powerful environment to hear things that you don't normally hear from people. So, as an example, um, like, if I have a friend who I'm close to and I care about their feelings, it's rare that in that friendship, if I believe this person, as an example, is a narcissist, it's rare in a friendship where someone's going to tell this person, "Hey, I think you're a narcissist," or "You're exhibiting narcissistic tendencies." And oftentimes we just sweep it under the rug. And so what this program did is it created an environment that was really powerful to uh, essentially allow you to hear a lot of feedback from people that you would otherwise not normally hear. So two things that I heard consistently that were mind blowing for me at the time were disconnected and arrogant. And I had never been told that to my face, ever. But
then you were disconnected and arrogant?
Correct. Never heard that to my face.
Mm.
And when they set it up in such a way that I heard that feedback in multiple separate environments. So it was set up in such a way that essentially, like, scientific method wise, it was undeniable that those two traits were standing out. And were mutually exclusive. It was set up in mutually exclusive environments, and the same information kept coming back to the point where I was like, oh shit, like, maybe there's something to this disconnected and arrogant thing. And so anyway, it was powerful for that context. However, in that particular context where it was set up in a mutually exclusive environment where people were giving immediate pieces of feedback based off of body language, vocal tone, all this kind of stuff, and saying this is what they see in you in terms of traits in the negative sense. It was insanely effective in that context to receive information that was really important for me to receive. Now, how this was, and so the idea or the thought there was that feedback is one of the most valuable things we can receive when we're trying to create or make or build anything, even ourselves. Because we can't see ourselves unless we have a mirror. So it was like the tactic or the idea or the tactic or the strategy essentially was that feedback is valuable or feedback is important to receive. Now, the issue is that out of this unique context, which the unique context was setting up a very specific curated environment and social construct such that the feedback was refined in both its extraction and its delivery. What this program did that I don't agree with is that it would then take the concept of feedback and apply it to in other ways that it did not work effectively. So, as an example, a very common practice in that community is to walk up to somebody and just ask, like, "Are you open for feedback?" And a very strong moment of equivocation occurs where there's already social expectation that if you say no, I'm not open to feedback, it implies in that community that you are lesser, or that you are, you are basically not, you're not open in life in general, and that's not a, um, what do you call it? Not a favorable trait. And then if you say yes, then you are open. There's already presupposition there. And then what happens then? Are you open for feedback? Then the person then just they share their interpretation of you. Now, the challenge is outside of that, again, very specific context where the curation and the extraction and the delivery of the feedback is very important in that context. Outside that context, giving your first gut feedback towards people is what's happening in that situation. Your first gut reaction. Outside of that very curated context, it's still treated as though it's truth. It's like, what someone is saying to me in this moment is important for me to hear no matter what's going on. And so what happens is that there's a culture inside of that community of people just giving each other unsolicited takes on each other's behavior. And it creates this really ugly side of that space where people feel self-conscious and they feel like they feel constantly subject to everybody else's opinion of them. And so to me, there's what I uncovered in that space was there's a behavior where people will take a really good tool from one context and it's perfect in that context, but then apply that same tool in another context, assuming that it's going to be just as effective, and it's actually not, because the context of which the tool was most effective is now taken away. Kind of like taking a screwdriver and trying to hammer in a nail with a screwdriver. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Using the hammer for a nail and the screw for a screwdriver. So, anyway, so that for me, when it comes to paradox, how it all relates back is that was the best example you come up with. Now, my outcome, Bryce, is I want to find a better example than this one, because it doesn't quite hit the nail on the head. No pun intended. But it's like I've encountered multiple situations in my life where a principle, a rule, a tactic, a tool will work unbelievably well in one particular context. In fact, it's arguably one of the best strategies one could use in a context. Yeah. You then take it into a separate context, and it actually is now the worst possible strategy. So
yeah, I have a lot to say on this. I'm trying to think of the most elegant way to put it. Because I'm excited to talk about this. All right, so let's start with the difference between how science works and then what was just described. Science will take facts, individual data, and then analyze those. And facts are separate from opinions. In this scenario, these are opinions, and none of the things that somebody says, well, my thoughts are the way you're doing this is this. That doesn't make it a fact. That's this person's subjective opinion.
Correct.
In science, it's objective, factual. So you will always get contradictions when it comes to people's subjective opinion. I was watching video on Charlie on YouTube the other day saying that he had a video called somebody who hates musicals went to go see Wicked. And I want to I'm like, oh man, like he says he hates musicals. I'm assuming he loved Wicked by the title. And he's like, no, I did not like it. Why? Because it's a musical. And he said this thing. He's like, look, you can grow the best, most juiciest peach in the world, but you're just gonna find someone eventually that doesn't like peaches. You know, so
Yeah.
it doesn't. When it comes to subjectivity, um, and the thing that like we have this urge to do the right thing that impacts the most people, and hypothetically, we think, oh, there must be something that connects everybody. I've been searching for that my whole life. That I think that's what the song "The Rainbow Connection" is about. Is just trying to find something that we all have in common. Just one thing that we can all have a beginning of connection on and grow from there. Um, I've determined that there is a thing, and that thing is simply just connection itself. Our ability to uh, find patterns and connect them together in the positive or the negative sense. We all have that. But when it comes to what's something that we all like, or what's a good method for um, everyone to use to provide feedback in a subjective sense, yeah, I would not say that is a practical tool for that, and the tool itself is false, and the second law of logic still stands.
No, what? Yeah, what kind of for me is what's coming up around this is like you're us discussing this is really so it's really helping me create um a stronger sense of definition and compartmentalization. So it's like there are things that I'm like, hey, what about this? And it's like you're providing back the very logical breakdown, which is like, oh, now I see the difference between the two. So in the context of which this is an effective strategy, it is described that what people are saying is not truth. But what is happening is you're getting a lot of data. So essentially, you're getting seven people. Yes, there's essentially like 6 pods of 7 individuals, and you rotate from each individual or each pod to each pod. And so you're getting 7 data points per individual pod. And what you can do as the individual receiving all the data is you can then ask from all the data which one A is sticking, what are the common denominators here out of all the data, and also which data points that I hear seem to sting the most. And it's like two subjective measures, but because you're getting lots of data, you can extract whatever you define as you can extract whatever meaning you want from that data, which makes it effective. However, if you're in a different context, which is, one person, one data point, one opinion, it's like that, it's like it's not the strategy, it's the actual like literal scientific method of the whole thing. It's like, yeah, if I go to 6 different pods of 7 individuals per pod, that's a total of how many data points is that? What's 6 times 7? I don't even know what 6 times 7 is. It's a lot of data.
Is it 42?
No, what is it? Maybe it is.
It's 42. Not 42.
No, it is 42. It is 42. You're right.
Yeah.
So it's 42. It's
the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, dude. That's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah. So 42. That's hilarious. Good reference. 42. God, that's amazing. That's what was created right there. That's funny. So 42 is like that's a good amount of data points, and it's like under that circumstance, it's like, yeah, you can extract some valuable information from 42 data points, but from one data point, it's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. So for me, it's like it's not a paradox at all. It's actually what I'm seeing there is like a delineating factor is it's like the method, a breakdown of the method because it works. Yeah, it's hard for me to describe this distinctly, but I'm creating distinction from our talking about this. This is super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't need to respond.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were still pondering something. Okay, yeah. So So the idea that a lot of people, well, I don't know if a lot of people think this, but but a decent amount of people are convinced that paradoxes in the sense that you were talking about before are true, and I'm here saying no. That's number 7 on the master list of logical fallacies, known as alternative truth. The second law of logic demands that is impossible, and so does science. There's no such thing.
I really want to. I love this a lot. It's bringing up. Can I keep sharing?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just like it's so good because I'm hearing this, and it's like, okay, because I've had, and I'm gonna do my best to like evaluate this and bring it to our next call, because there's a lot coming up for me around this. What I've especially in the past like 3 or 4 months, I've been doing a lot of like work on myself, but specifically like truly like trying to eliminate the pains, the hurts, the traumas, the etc., to create a more a more loving Alan, an Alan that has the ability to love more people in a bigger way. And I realize that, oh, it's the stuff that it's the pain, the trauma, it's the unresolved stuff, it's the limiting beliefs, whatever you want to call that. It's like all that stuff was getting in the way. There's been a lot of work of like, how do I eliminate the pain and extract the good, the love, the care, the light, etc. And in that journey, there's been multiple instances where, just like I just described, some rule are present and constant in one context, and then in another context, the rules are switched. And I chalked that up to, oh, just paradox, and life is full of paradoxes. And now that I'm like, now that I'm talking to you, well, what I'm kind of like gathering from this is like, no, it's like, it's not, no, it's like paradox is a word that's used to permit a lack of attention to detail. It's like, oh, I don't know all the factors at play here, so I'm going to call it a paradox because I'm not going to inspect all the factors to understand what's really going on. And that feels really good. It feels both scary and good at the same time in my body to like say that out loud, because it's like there's like an awareness to how much more there is to learn, but a breath of fresh air, an awareness of how much more there's to learn, which is creating a simultaneous awareness of how little I know. And then there's also a breath of fresh air around like, oh, this magical thing that is this quote unquote magic concept, paradoxes, right? It's eliminating some of the it's eliminating some of like the power that like quote unquote spiritual leaders have when they say things like that, because it's like no, there's just more to understand. There's more pieces to this than what I'm willing to inspect. And I just appreciate that perspective, because it's like, I don't know, I think, again, we've talked about this before in previous calls. You and I think, share a mutual um a mutual desire, a mutual obsession, whatever you want to call it, of like wanting to know exactly how things work. Like, I don't want to know kind of how it works. I don't want to know, only 80% of how it works. I want to know exactly how it works.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Like,
So if I were to take my car favorite color hypothesis, and I found someone that their favorite color is red and their car is blue, and I'm just like, oh well, that's an interesting paradox. Moving on, and I don't allow my hypothesis to be falsified because I just call it a paradox. That is called special pleading. And that is what anti-science is all about. Where if you don't allow your hypothesis to be falsified, You're full of shit, dude.
Yep.
Your hypothesis is wrong. Get a new one. Don't just stick with the old one because it feels good.
Or like even more simply, it's like because even that like directive, it requires time, effort, energy, and someone like you couldn't even with that directive like find a new one, right? It's like fuck that could be months of study or months of trial and error or whatever. But it's like at the very least, if you're not, it's like in the meantime, while you're searching for more truth and more facts and more evidence or more clarity or more intricacy, whatever, at the very least, in the short term, just admit you don't know.
Yep, it's like you nailed it. That is the honest thing to do.
Yes. And I think like that's such a, and this is coming through a lot right now too, like, especially with all the stuff that happened over this last weekend with Amanda and I and whatnot. It's like, I think there's this, and now we're going to go into a realm that you can't really prove like masculine and feminine energy. You can't really prove that like way of being. So I want to acknowledge I'm going to use some terms that are not provable, but they're
Okay.
they are there are terms there are terms that help me understand the world a little bit easier because I can put it into a box that makes
Sure, you're
easier for me to understand. Yeah,
I will consider this venting. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's just personal. It's like a personal way to describe something that. Anyway, so it's like in terms of two general camps of, I'll say, ways of being. Masculine being more direct, forceful, penetrative, get shit done, accomplish, etc. And then feminine being the umbrella of flow, interconnectivity with all things all at one time, experience, sensation, etc. It's like I noticed that people who tend to behave more in the camp of characteristics that I would define as masculine traits tend to really struggle with saying I don't know, and to really struggle with allowing themselves to say I'm uncertain. And it's like what I've really learned, which is really beautiful about that muscle. It's like if one is able to, in the same breath, be both certain with their tone about what they do know and to be able to freely declare what they don't, what it creates is the possibility for human beings to have sovereignty. It's like if you stand in front, example, you stand in front of a crowd full of people.
Can you define sovereignty for me because I don't actually know what it means?
Yeah, sovereignty is like individual agency. It's like individual agency. So as an example, like a lot of the ways that leaders get things to go their way is they take away people's sovereignty. They take away their individual agency. They
How do you spell
provide
it?
enough sovereignty. That's a good question.
I got it. Sovereignty is the idea of supreme authority or power and the right to be self-governing. Well, I am having a very hard time understanding that concept. But okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll see if I'll add like another layer to it. It's like basically if I encapsulate you, Bryce, with enough logical fallacies to the point where you're so confused that you're in quite literally a hypnotic state of suggestibility, I've taken away your sovereignty. I've taken away your ability to make decisions for yourself using your compass because I've successfully temporarily cracked your brain to do whatever I tell you to do. Does that make sense? It's something that people who use fallacies
if you
use all the
use
time.
sure. I mean, you mean using fallacies on me?
It's like
Sure, yeah. Okay.
What a lot of leaders do and influential speakers do is apply enough fallacies in succession that the brain cannot keep up with their own like individual model of the world anymore. And so now the mind then just adopts the next thing that's available, which is the person's view of the world who was using all the fallacies.
Right. It's essentially gaslighting.
Yeah. But it's literally like take over of someone else's mind.
Right. Yeah.
And so like for me, this has been a theme for me over the past like year and a half, especially like the importance of protecting people's sovereignty, the importance of, hey, I'm going to give you all the information, knowledge, and experiences that I can give you, but I'm not going to do it at the cost of your individual ability to decide for yourself what you would like to extract from it. And so in the masculine feminine umbrella type context, there, in my experience of looking at the world, there's been a lot of essentially like a desire to be certain and to use fallacies and to penetrate like what like someone's belief systems on the world. Like, you believe what I believe, bam, right? With an unwillingness to in the next breath say, by the way, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And
yeah,
what that does is, I believe it makes way for when someone can do both and say, I know this, I don't know that. I think it allows people to maintain their own individual, again, I'll use that word, sovereignty. And I'm really appreciating this discussion because it's like, ultimately, it's like, yeah, I think this is just my way of, I'm just ranting at this point. It's just my way of saying, like, I believe that whatever we can do as human beings to protect each individual sovereignty, I believe that is the way to move forward. Not how do I try to sound and be certain as often as I can because I feel I don't want to lose control.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, by saying, hey, I don't know, what ends up happening is you actually give up a little bit of control. If you constantly tell people all around you, I know, I have the answers, I have all the answers, it leaves you in complete control. But the moment that you say, I actually don't know these answers, I don't know these things, what then happens at that point is the person gives up control to everyone in front of them. And
no, I think that's the gender normative thing that you're thinking of. It's quite the opposite. If I'm saying that I know something and I don't, then what I'm doing is very fragile. Someone can point out, like, hey, well, what about this? And like, if I'm saying stuff that's full of shit, and like they're calling it out, and I can't back it up because I'm full of shit, no, yeah, then you're gonna lose a lot of people because they're gonna know you're full of shit. But if you're like, hey, I do know this, and this is how I know it, and I don't know this, and this is why, and if you can figure it out, we're gonna give you a Nobel Prize. That's the way to move forward and gain trust. That's the reason that you trust what I'm saying when I'm like, yeah, Alan, paradoxes are impossible, but I don't know the definition of sovereignty. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can say, I don't know, and have power. The assumption that you can't is the problem.
Right. No, it's but there's like a, so it's like a, to me it's
a gender thing. It's a male thing that you perceive to be very masculine, to have all the answers when you fucking don't, and just be honest about it. And I personally don't think it's a gender thing. But
no, and to be clear, when I say masculine and feminine, I don't mean man and woman. I don't mean gender.
And I don't know what the fuck you mean if you don't mean that. Oh God. That'll open up a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. I'll be.
Let's stay on topic. Let's get to the point. Let's stay on topic as much as we can because we gotta wrap up soon.
Yep. Well, how do you want to go back to that? I was on the flow, but if we want to go back, where we can
Okay. Yeah. So, I just want to give you one more thing if you have 5 minutes, because I don't think it'd be better. Okay, very good. So, can you concede the laws of logic are true? Can we get past that?
Can I concede that the laws of logic are true? I can't because I don't know. Me personally, I haven't done enough research and testing to like confirm for myself. Yep, I know these are true.
Okay. Well, then we gotta do that first, because if there's the two things that are certain. All right, I'll put it in math terms. Can you concede all of mathematics are true? There's two things that are absolute: mathematics and logic. Can we concede? I'm surprised the answer isn't like yes right away, which is very fascinating. Like, I'm learning a lot about your psychology, or what's going on in your brain right now, and it is truly fascinating that that you're having trouble conceding that math and logic is true.
Yeah. Let me
Very
share with you. Let me share with you. Let me share with you why. So here's where the resistance is coming from. The resistance is coming from it's a personal place, not a So there's been the amount of times that, as an example, science has claimed to have the answers, and then we find out later that it very much did not. As an example, like at one point, mercury was used to cure people's syphilis.
Yeah, we're not talking about science. We're talking about math and logic. So yeah, science can change. Math and logic does not. Science is a method of discovery, and we're getting closer and closer to the truth, but we never reach it. So, you cannot ever actually say science is absolute truth. You can say it's consistent beyond reasonable doubt. Math. Alan, can you concede 1 + 1 is 2 always, no matter what?
Yes, I can concede that.
Okay. With conceding that, can you concede that 1 × 1 is 1?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable now conceding that all of mathematics, that subject, is true by itself? You don't need anything else.
The resistance I have is that math and science are two things that are typically.
Yeah, we're not talking about science. What jump on that?
What I'm talking about is I'm talking about my feelings. I'm talking about how usually people who weaponize science usually also weaponize math. And it's like,
yeah, I'm not trying to put you in a box or something. Like, I'm just like, this is like very. I'm not trying to gotcha. It's just like, come on.
yeah,
Like, can you concede math? Like,
yeah. I hear you. Yes, I can concede that math is absolute.
okay, very good. Okay, and then okay, now we can do that. Logic is just math, but in words. So, so the first law of logic was what again? Self-identity. Is that what it was?
Yep, identity, correct.
All right. So essentially, it's just saying 1 must also equal 1, and 2 must also equal 2. Can you concede the first law of logic?
Yes.
Okay. Second law of logic. What non-contradiction? That 2 is not equal to 1, and 2 is not equal to anything other than 2. 1.9999999 repeating is not 2. It's close to 2, but we can't say it's exactly the same thing. That's the second law of logic. Can you concede?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was the last one?
Look, excluded middle. Excluded middle. That's correct.
Okay. So there's nothing in between 1.99999 and 2. There's nothing, it's either 2 or it's not, and there's no in between being partly 2 and partly not 2.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Very well. We've made progress. So you can concede that's what it is. It's just, that's math, that's logic.
Yeah,
we're good, right? Very good. Okay. So now that we've discussed that, those are absolutes. Those are the only two subjects that are absolute. Truly, math and logic, and we proved it, right? So, in the mathematical sense, we proved it, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Very good. Hey, proof also applies to logic too. So proof, like in school when they're like, prove this in math, and you're like, bitch, just look at it.
Yeah.
It's like that is the correct term of proof. In science, there is no such proof. At least in the positive sense, you can prove things in the negative, because the reason you can prove things in the negative in science is because of the second law of logic, the law of non-contradiction. If the fact contradicts the hypothesis, then you know for certain it's impossible. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So you can now agree without us using any circular reasoning, going from math to logic to falsifiability in science, you can agree that we know that if there's a fact that contradicts a hypothesis must be wrong, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Very well. Awesome. So, a tool that we can use to help us get there is something called reductio ad absurdum. I want to see if I can spell that. Reductio ad absurdum. Okay. It's spelled REDUCTIO. New word AD. New word ABSURDUM. Reductio ad absurdum. I'm just going to read what the AI says. A logical argument that attempts to establish a claim by showing that the opposite scenario would lead to absurdity or contradiction. So, I want to fit this in here since we're covering the 3 laws of logic, because this is reasonable, and the rest of what we're reading for the rest of this playlist is unreasonable. So I want to cover the one reasonable thing. This is a tool that you can use. If the hypothesis of whatever statement is true, it must be true in all scenarios, even in the most extreme. So someone once posted a picture on Facebook of someone on Reddit saying, the reason that plants are green is because the sky is blue and the sun is yellow, and those two together make green. And then underneath that was someone saying, I'm a biologist, and it's funny how this is true. And they're like, see, it's true. And I'm like, no, that's false, and I can prove it. And just because somebody comments that they're a biologist and they think it's true, doesn't mean that they're right or that they're a biologist. They could be lying. It's a picture of fucking Reddit, dude. Like, it's so, and they're like, okay, well, prove it. I'm like, okay, I will use reductio ad absurdum. The sky is fucking blue. Like, the actual substance, the atmosphere is not blue, it's clear. And they're like, no, the sky is blue. Like, it's not actually, because during the nighttime, if the sky was blue, that would mean all of the stars and the moon would also be blue, because you'd be looking through a blue filter if the sky was actually blue. And it's not. Therefore, the sky is not blue. The sun makes the sky blue. And that's using reductio ad absurdum. Also, the sun's fucking white. It's not yellow. And if it was yellow, then at noon, everything on Earth would look yellow because there would be a yellow light on it. It's white. But at sundown, it gets yellow, and then orange, and then red, and then it goes away. Sure. But during, like, regular daytime, no, the sun's fucking white. Anyways. Well, sorry, what did you say?
So I agree with you.
Very good. Yeah. So using that tool, that's reductio ad absurdum. If a hypothesis is true, it must be true in all scenarios, even the most extreme. And so I'm curious, because maybe that would be scenarios that the past you would have called a paradox, but now current you would say, no, that falsifies the hypothesis. The hypothesis is wrong.
You're asking me if my definition of that has changed, or my operation on it has changed.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't asking. I was assuming that was the case.
Oh.
I guess I should ask that because I thought that's the lesson that we learned.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's. Yeah. I would agree that changes occurred. I'll share here's what I'll share. And this is important to just I'm going to be hopping in the car and we're going to continue to chat. But
okay.
I think it's important to share this, man. That this work that we're doing is actually very. I'll say this for myself. It's actually pretty scary. And the reason it's scary is
in the good way.
In a good way. I'll say in a good way. It doesn't feel good all the time, but no, it's true. So, the reason being is when you do something like you just did, which is, can you concede to XYZ? The part that's scary about it is that the amount of times that I've been asked to do just that, but from people who had the intention of causing me harm, or install ideas, or created something from that concession that was not helpful to me or humanity, but helpful to them, is actually pretty numerous. And so there's it's not, I'm you can see to math, right? I'm not sitting here and being like,
I'm so glad this was recorded. This is fascinating that someone had a hard time conceding to that. And it was Alan of all people.
No, but here's the thing, Bryce. It's not me having a hard time conceding to math. It's having a hard time conceding. It's having a hard time conceding to a person asking me to concede to something. That's more what the challenge is. Because 1 + 1 is 2. Yes, it's what came up for me was not, I think I'm going to start questioning math, Bryce. It was more of, hey, the last time I was asked to concede to something, it led to someone manipulating me, and someone hurting me, and someone guiding me down a pathway that ultimately led to distrust and trauma and damage. And so it's it has nothing to do with math or even with you. It's actually what was coming up in that moment with, oh man, there's pain. There's pain there. There's yeah. I don't even know if there's even a point of me sharing this or why I'm saying it. It's just more I wanted to acknowledge.
It's very important. It's actually number 14. We'll get there. It's called argument from consequence, and it's being afraid of what the answer is, and so you don't want to participate. But what science is all about is it doesn't matter what the answer is. The answer must be true. it's okay to say it. Now, if you're asked to concede, but you don't actually know the answer, whether you're afraid of it or not, you could just say, I don't know. You know, like there's three positions you could take: yes, no, or I don't know. And
to be fair, when I was struggling with the concession, you laughed at me. To be fair,
yeah,
and in that moment, so you laughed at me. My system was like, "Oh man, there's an expectation. I need to answer a certain way." And then a very panicked part of me was like, "Shit, where is he taking me?" And it's not about. It wasn't about, to be clear. It wasn't about, oh, Bryce is a bad person. You know, it was more of. It was more of another human seems to have a desired outcome for me to go down. The last time that occurred in such an environment, it was done to hurt me. So therefore, this situation could be the same.
Mm. I apologize for laughing. Then I was definitely shocked me.
Yeah, but it's like, I think what I'm sharing this for is like, it's just like, well, going through this, dude, it's really having me be and feel, frankly, like how much this stuff is used, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, is used for harm.
Interesting. See, I am if someone, even if they were against me, was using the "would you concede to this" thing, I think because of how much I've studied logic and science, regardless, even if I did concede whatever to them on whatever path they're trying to lead me towards, I would be able to snuff out where which one of the concessions is a fallacy. But if none of them are, then I will be like, you know what? You're right, and I was wrong, and I concede the whole thing. And that has happened to me, and that's a good thing. I've never seen it as a bad thing. I don't believe me conceding to something is harmful. I think it's the opposite. I think that you should pride yourself in learning something new. I'm interested to know when you were harmed and how it harmed you. Because that's fascinating. Maybe that could be a different time if you want it to be.
No,
but
20 minutes in the car. I'm more than happy to chat if you got time.
Sure. All right. This is the longest alternative truth fallacy recording ever. Then, but awesome. I think this is still important. I thought the biggest one was going to be number 10, which is appeal to nature. Which, by the way, I want to dedicate a whole episode of us talking about just that one. That one's going to be massive. So next week will be 8 and 9, and then we'll hold off 10 for the following. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Who hurt you? Who
hurt you? Yeah. No, it honestly, it's bringing back echoes, and this would be something that I wouldn't want to have released or published. So it'd be something that we would.
Okay. Is there a way you can phrase this that you would be comfortable with this being vulnerable?
I think genuinely I'll put it this way, I think there's healing available for me in my own life if I'm able to be freely specific with the details, as well as there's benefit, there's potential benefit to our relationship to deepen in intimacy if I'm allowed to speak frankly in my human experience without there being recording.
Absolutely. Can you phrase it in a way where you're not specific, and then I'll end it, and then you can tell me the specifics after? Is that possible? Just because it's also something that you and I can look back on and be like, remember when we went through this revelation? Yeah. Is there a compromise that we can do? Because I want to hear the specifics.
Yeah, I can share. I'll share thematically, and then I'd love to.
Then we'll call it. Okay, very good.
Yep. So thematically, there was a person in my life who by the nature of the relationship that was created between me and this person, because I want to be clear, like I'm not a saint. I'm not someone who doesn't make mistakes, right? It's like we all make mistakes in relationships. We all do things that later on we reflect back and go, wow, I see how I contributed. It wasn't just this person. So I want to be clear that I'm not speaking from a victim mentality or a lack of responsibility. There was a relationship that I was a part of where, especially this one, and yeah, especially this one, the what was the fallacy? Just your name it again for me.
What was the fallacy that we're on right now? Alternative Truth?
Alternative Truth, yeah. This one and a couple other ones that we had, man. It's like, even throughout the entirety of our discussion, these were brought about constantly. And specifically there were two that were used a lot. The first one was, I can't remember what it's called, but basically it was the one that whoever can speak the quickest is right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is like basically being cornered by questioning. So questions. So this is one of the things that's really powerful about the human mind is the unconscious mind. If you give it a question, it must find an answer. It's almost like starting a calculator. In a calculator, I put 1 + 1 equals. It must spit out 2. So the brain, when you ask the brain a question, it must answer the question. And if it doesn't know the answer, or if it can't find out the answer, it will obsess subconsciously, which is why you have things like someone will have a question and then they'll dream up the answer, or they'll wake up the next morning and they go, ah, or they'll say, oh, I'm trying to figure out this one actor. What was that actor's name? It'll come to me later. And then an hour and a half later, they go, ah, John Stamos. It's like, the brain has to do that. And so questions, if questions are one of the most powerful mechanisms for using someone's brain against them. And I had a person in my life who was extraordinarily good at using questions maliciously. And
I think you know exactly who you're talking about.
I hope so. Yeah. This person, I felt like I was crazy. I didn't know who I truly was. I distrusted friends and family. I literally, because of this individual and how good they were at manipulating reality with questions and with things like you just said, can we concede that? Can we this, that, right? Like, I literally abandoned my family. I got rid of friends who I care about dearly. And slowly but surely, Alan was eroded into something that not only wasn't Alan, but was incredibly painful to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely mean this, like, sincerely. There is a chance that if there had not been some type of intervention in my life, I might not be here today. I've contemplated ending my life before, and I was getting to the point where I was beginning to do it again. And it was an amount of, and I really do hesitate to use the word, because I think that what ends up happening with the word abuse, I think it actually takes away the power from the person who is the victim of abuse. Because what it does is it's like the abuser and the abuse, and it gives that person and that dynamic way too much power. Therefore,
Sometimes both people can be abusive.
100%, yes. But I refrain from using abuse because, to me, I've noticed in my past when I have called this person an abuser or I have called their behavior abuse, I have noticed I take less agency to take back my own like sovereignty in my own life, which is why I care so much about sovereignty. But the treatment that I received in that time was one of the most soul crushing treatments I'd received, and that treatment was happening for at least 5 years straight.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's thematically what I can say in terms of like the resistance I had from conceding to your questions. It was coming from that experience.
Fascinating.
Because it was so powerful. And I think that honestly, like, dude, like, it's actually in today's world, and this is, I think, important for anyone listening to understand and for us to really keep moving forward with understanding, especially in today's world where I gotta be fucking honest, man, like, and I know people know this, but it's like, it's so real. The world today is so, especially in the United States, is so motivated by profit over all things
Mm-hmm.
that people today are used to being manipulated. They're used to being gaslit by their own companies, their own government, their own family, their own friends. Like, it's a very normal thing today to be taken advantage of utilizing human psychology. Even if we just look at social media, literally these instruments that are designed to be quite literally more addictive than cocaine, alcohol, or any type of drug combined. If you take the combined addictive power of all of the most addictive substances on the planet, it is not as addictive as social media is. And
Well, I don't know about that, but I would need a significant evidence to believe that. But sure, I know it's very powerful.
yes. And so that, and the worst part is that, we in society, we say that, heroin, you can't have heroin, but feel free to consume as much social media as you like. And it's like, or it's, same thing in terms of alcohol. So my whole point is that, like, I think it's really important. I'll speak for my own self in a discussion, you and I, Bryce, but also for listeners, to anybody who may be listening. I think it's really important to just be in acknowledgement to the amount of pain that can come up as a result of utilizing these strategies and these tactics and this conversation, because the very thing that you and I are using to discuss this in a positive sense, in a truth-seeking sense, in a love motivated sense, there has been thousands of interactions before this that have used the exact same thing to cause harm. And it's like, I just want to like point that out, that if, now speaking more to the viewership, if anybody experiences triggering or hurt or pain listening to us discuss, like, just be aware that I think that, like, I'll speak for myself and I can't speak for Bryce, but like, I acknowledge you in your experience, and I don't invalidate your experience as you listen to this. There was something, I'll share a personal story, and then I promise I'll stop.
Sure.
I had a client that I worked with, that I loved working with this client. And they responded well, they dove deep, they were making massive progress. And I also liked them as a client because they consistently pushed my edge for, like, basically, if I didn't continuously improve, this person would outpace me, and therefore I no longer had value in their life. So I needed to consistently grow just to keep up with this person, which is wonderful. And it came down to the end of their contract, meaning we had a certain amount of time to work with each other, and that time was now over, and it was time to discuss, do we continue or do we part ways? And I had every assumption in the world that this person was going to continue without question, without any kind of, attention. We get on the call, and I could tell immediately based off of body language cues and language usage that this person was actually very reticent. And I was like, interesting, that's not what I expected on this call. And so I asked them, I said, hey, what's going on? I'm getting the sense that there's something wrong. And this person said, after kind of creating a safe space for them to answer, they said, yeah, I felt really marginalized inside of your coaching container. And immediately I was absolutely floored. I couldn't believe it, because the amount of love and care that I put towards people to me is everything. And to hear that someone that I valued so much felt marginalized, it was soul crushing. I said, my God, I was like, can you please tell me what happened? Like, can you please tell me about your experience? And this person said to me, they said, yeah, there are two things that are consistently mentioned in your container unconsciously. The first is a dichotomous language around man, woman, masculine, feminine, etc. And there's no room made for fluidity. And so for me, I don't identify strongly with either side, but because you had always talked about it in the concept of the or and directly related it to man and woman, I felt marginalized. And on top of that, when you refer to a higher power, you always use Christian-based language, of which I very much have a lot of resistance and resentment towards Christianity. And so this person requested that I use inclusive language, then using they instead of he, she, and that if I was going to utilize language referring to a higher power, that I use more inclusive language. At this time in my growth, this was incredibly shocking, because at the time I was completely convinced I looked ahead by a car. Completely convinced of masculine, feminine.
Attention to the road.
I promise I am. I was completely convinced of masculine and feminine dynamics, and I was completely convinced of my faith at that time. And it forced me to be in a really strong weekend of reflection. I went to, I called every person that I trusted with this kind of information. I journaled, I reflected, I meditated, I did whatever I could. I researched, I looked at videos, I did what I needed to do to extract a new conclusion from it. And from that research, I came back to the group call the next week, and I announced to the people in my container, I said, this is now, from now on and for the rest of eternity, this coaching container is going to be using inclusive language, and here are my guidelines for using inclusive language inside of this community. These guidelines are not created by me. These are what inclusive language looks like based off of this myth, and here's how it's going to work. And it took someone having a human experience and a human reaction to what was being talked about in order for me to make those changes. And since then, those changes take held firm, and it's created a really positive impact in our container. So I share this all to say that, like, I want people who are listening to this, and even ourselves as we look back, like, this stuff will probably bring up a lot of emotions, and I just really want you to hear. And I believe I can speak for Bryce in this one, and Bryce, you can correct me if not. But I think that both Bryce and I stand for people's emotions to be held sacred, that if they feel things while this is happening, that we are not doing this to try to harm anyone or to tell them they're wrong or to convict somebody of an offense that they'd committed. That instead, it's really, we're here to acknowledge that, hey, we're dealing with concepts and things that literally abusers or or influencers who are not sure to influence sovereignty and humanity have used for millennia, and unpacking it may create emotions. And I just wanted to say that we are here, we are available for your emotions, whatever they are, and we're doing this with that in mind, not ignorantly ignoring your existence. And that was why I shared that story. Was my client's primary grievance with the behavior was not that I was using that kind of language. Her grievance was I felt ignored. My existence felt ignored. And that was where the pain came from. And so I just want for those people who feel pain as a result of what we're talking about, you are not ignored. We are not ignoring you. We acknowledge what's going on here. And my commitment in my own experience is that every time things do come up that are painful for me, that I express them and I talk about them as plainly as I can, just so that we can share in solidarity the human experience that we feel emotions when we dive into deep topics.
Yeah. I love it. I love how much this is rocking your world, and I am excited to see the Alan that finishes this list being indestructible from people doing these to Alan. And man, it's exciting because once you have all these, I feel that whatever line of reasoning that someone's going to bring me down, I don't ever have to be afraid of the answer. If I concede that I'm excited to concede, and if I find that they're using fallacious reasoning, then I could point it out so other people are not tricked by it. So yeah, I'm excited.
Me too. I'm happy we're doing this.
Hell yeah. And that was two fallacies. That was alphabet soup and alternative truth.
It's really powerful. It's a really powerful. We're creating a very powerful container for expression, which is good.
All right, and then the next episode is going to be number 8, appeal to closure.